Welcome back. We've shown you the power of water and the destruction it can do. But what about the power of people? How much control do we have in preventing another Katrina?
You know, if we learned anything from Katrina is that we're incredibly vulnerable. Even the richest country in the world has to think very critically about how we handle these disasters.
Many of the lessons from Katrina or repeated Sandy.
Lieutenant General Russell Honore was commander of Joint Task Force Katrina immediately following the storm.
What we've got to remember, on any given day, Mother Nature can break anything built by man, and it broke the Gulf Coast of New Orleans and the Gulf Coast of Mississippi.
Katrina caused $46 billion in insured losses, but 50 years from now, analysts say a similar disaster could cost more than $250 billion.
From a future perspective, the real issue is population and sea level rise. So even though the climate models are expecting fewer storms, those storms are expected to be bigger. And because of that, the financial risk could be 2, even 3 times higher than it was during Katrina.
As we've stressed, the Louisiana flood protection system is only as reliable as its maintenance. And that maintenance depends on tax dollars. Those tax dollars, they depend on votes. There recently has been some balking a little bit at spending the money to maintain what's been built.
It's going to be very difficult. St. Bernard just lost a tax proposal to keep up. You know, they were flooded horribly for Katrina. Now they've got a big wall around St. Bernard, but the people turned down a tax to keep that infrastructure up. So it's going to be a battle going forward.
When you combine required flood insurance with homeowners insurance, for many people, it's no longer affordable to live on the coast.
It may not be the infrastructure, it's here, ready for people to use it, but we still have insurance problems. If you can find it, you can't afford it.
Add relative sea level rise into the mix, and the stakes get even higher in 50 years.
So the climate problem for 2065 is really a financial problem, and it's one that businesses, insurance companies, and especially governments are looking at really hard right now.
As bad as it was, Katrina was still not the worst case scenario. A much stronger hurricane may be lurking for the Gulf Coast, and most meteorologists agree it's not a matter of if, but when.
Any Gulf hurricane in the future is likely to produce more storm surge because the Gulf is going to be starting higher.
And remember, a major hurricane, Category 3 or higher, has not made landfall in the U.S. in 10 years. The last time, it was Wilma in October of 2005. And the more time passes, the more folks forget.
I think we have a short-term memory of what happened 10 years ago.
50 years that's a bit of a dangerous time span because it extends beyond a generation. It's actually going out into 2 generations. That's you hearing stories from your grandfather, and they lose something, obviously, when you're not experiencing them directly. So that's my biggest fear is people will forget.
Prior to Katrina, Camille was the benchmark Gulf Coast hurricane, a Category 5, hitting in 1969 with a peak storm surge of 24 feet. No one thought it could be topped, but almost 40 years later, Katrina, a record storm surge of nearly 28 feet.
Somewhere out there, there's a much larger storm than Hurricane Katrina. And it's the same concern that many coastal areas have.
The one biggest fear that we always say, don't base it on Katrina, base it on that it could be worse than the Katrina that we've seen. So waters could be higher, rains could be greater, winds could be stronger. So be safe, leave early.
Expect the unexpected, and don't ever think that it's not going to happen again. It may not be a Camille, but it's going to be a Katrina, and if not a Katrina, it's going to be a Sandy. It's going to happen somewhere. It's just a question of where and when.
Still so much more to examine as we take you 50 years into a future transformed by climate change. Louisiana is losing 16 square miles of hurricane protection each year. And in a half a century, what will that look like?
But we've got to build the ridges and islands and things that were out there 50, 100 years ago to give us a fighting chance.